The new Realme 5 Pro will compete with the Xiaomi Redmi Note 7 Pro and Mi A3, the Samsung Galaxy M and A series, and the recently launched Vivo Z1 Pro. It's also priced exactly up against the Realme X, and we have the top-end variant with us for review. This should be a very interesting review, so let's get started. But before we do, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever we have a new video. For a low-cost phone, the Realme 5 Pro looks and feels pretty good. It isn't too big or bulky, and the materials and finishes feel premium. You'll immediately notice the geometric pattern on the back with a metallic sheen and completely smooth finish. We quite like the blue-green jewel-toned look of our crystal green review unit, which is distinct without being garish. Despite its glossy look, the Realme 5 Pro is very easy to grip. The rounded sides and curved back panel make it fit comfortably in a palm. We didn't have any trouble using it even with one hand. There's a big 6.3-inch LCD screen on the front with a water drop notch for the front camera. The chin is fairly prominent, but the rest of the borders are narrow and modern looking. We generally don't like pre-applied screen guards, but some people do like having them for protection. The power and volume buttons are on opposite sides of the phone and are all within easy reach. On the left, you'll find a tray with individual slots for 2 nano SIMs and a micro SD card. There's a USB Type-C port on the bottom, along with a 3.5mm audio socket and a single speaker. One slight negative point about the design of the Realme 5 Pro is the raised camera module on the rear, which is fairly prominent and also has a slightly rough raised ring around it. The rear fingerprint sensor might be a little hard to reach if you have small hands, but it was quick and accurate. The phone also has face recognition, which works well. The default setting allows the phone to unlock itself even if your eyes are closed, which ideally shouldn't be the case. Fingerprints and face recognition can be used to unlock not only the phone but also individual apps and a private safe which lets you store documents and photos away from prying eyes. You can buy the Realme 5 Pro with 4GB of RAM and 64GB of storage for 13,999 rupees, 6GB of RAM with the same 64GB of storage for 14,999 rupees, or 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage for 16,999 rupees, which is a big jump. Realme also uses Oppo's ColorOS UI on top of Android 9. Our unit was running the July 2019 security patch. ColorOS 6 has been customized a little with slightly more modern-looking icons and a few other visual tweaks here and there. The UI has an app drawer, so all icons aren't strewn around on the home screens. To the left of the first home screen is a Smart Assistant page where you can get sports scores, track orders from online shops, and keep track of upcoming flights, among other things. There are loads of pre-installed apps ranging from Realme's own community and store apps to the popular Amazon Shopping, Hilo, Facebook, and many more. Many of these can be uninstalled, but the system-level ones can't even be disabled. Thankfully, we didn't have to deal with constant pop-up notifications and advertisement spam. You can long press the phone's power button to call up Google Assistant and launch apps with gestures on screen when the phone is in standby. Overall, the software and usage experience of the Realme 5 Pro are quite polished, and we do like the direction that Realme has taken. We first saw the Qualcomm Snapdragon 712 SoC in the value-packed Vivo Z1 Pro, and it makes an appearance here too. This chip has a slight edge over the Snapdragon 710 and 660, which are commonly found in phones in this segment. We had no problems whatsoever with everyday performance when using the Realme 5 Pro. However, do keep in mind that we had the top-end variant for review, which has 8GB of RAM. The lowest-end variant has only half as much, but that should still be more than enough for most people's everyday use. Handling and usage were easy, including when multitasking between heavy apps. The screen can get quite bright and is easy to use outdoors. Video content looked good with decent colors and sharpness, but it isn't the best that we've seen in this price segment. The single speaker can get quite loud and voices are still clear at high volume, but there's no bass or depth to any music at all. PUBG Mobile defaulted to its high preset and was playable, though the phone did get slightly warm over the course of a round. We didn't have any trouble with Asphalt 9 Legends either. We were able to get through a full day on a single charge using this phone, but we definitely had to plug it in at night. Our HD video loop test lasted for 12 hours 41 minutes, which is reasonable but not great. Using the included charger, we were able to get up to 15% in 10 minutes and 70% in just over half an hour. The Realme 5 Pro has a quad rear camera setup. The main rear camera has a 48-megapixel Sony IMX586 sensor with an f1.79 aperture. Next, there's an 8-megapixel wide-angle camera with an f2.25 aperture, a 2-megapixel macro camera, and a 2-megapixel depth sensor. The front camera has a 16-megapixel sensor and f2 aperture. The camera app looks slick, but the layout is a bit awkward. For starters, there's no easy way to switch between cameras. A toggle button at the top of the screen lets you activate or deactivate the wide-angle camera, but to use the macro one, you have to select the ultra macro mode, which is not easy to access. Shots taken in the daytime with the primary camera were quite sharp and the color balance was good. The Realme 5 Pro was quick to lock focus and we didn't have any trouble with usability. We liked its results in terms of fine detail in the foreground as well as clarity in distant objects. There's a little grain in shadowy areas towards the sides of some frames, but the primary camera worked very well even for high contrast scenes. As expected, the wide-angle camera delivers lower quality shots and should really only be used when you need to fit a lot into one frame. Zooming into shots reveals significant loss in details and color accuracy. Overall quality is poor compared to shots taken with the primary camera a moment earlier from exactly the same spot. The macro camera is also more for playing with compositions than for everyday use. You might find that it has limited utility. When you're in ultra macro mode, you'll see best quality at 4cm displayed on the viewfinder, but there's no way to know for sure that you're at the ideal focal distance. Some trial and error might be needed because photos might look sharp on the phone screen, but be a bit off when checked out at full size. Macro shots are just 1600 by 1200 pixels in resolution, which is 2.1 megapixels. Details outside the focus area are definitely rough. Colors were blotchy and textures weren't great either. Just using the primary camera and cropping shots often produced similar, if not better, results in some cases. However, the depth of field can look pretty great. You can have fun and get quite a bit of creative satisfaction using this camera. Selfies are also decent, but some of our samples looked a little overprocessed, which made our skin look artificial. Unfortunately, the shots we took at night were not as impressive. There was a lot of noise and grain even with lights nearby. You can use these photos if you aren't planning to enlarge them or zoom in at all. Detail was poor unless there was bright light shining directly on our subjects, in which case the results were far more appealing. The wide-angle camera predictably takes poorer shots at night with much duller colors. We wouldn't bother even trying to use the macro camera at night as objects were barely even discernible. Selfies were not too bad though. Video is recorded at 1080p 30fps by default, though it can go up to 4K 30fps or 1080p 60fps. The quality of video is generally quite good in the daytime. There's electronic stabilization, which seemed to work fairly well for us at 1080p. Video looked smooth and bright, though at 4K there was an odd pink tinge throughout. One big surprise is that you can't use the wide-angle camera to record video, which seems like a pointless waste. There's a lot to like about the Realme 5 Pro. The entry-level variants seem like good options and will compete strongly against the Redmi Note 7 Pro, the Samsung Galaxy M30 and the Vivo Z1 Pro. However, if your budget can stretch enough for you to consider the top-end configuration that we have reviewed, you might find the Realme X more appropriate. 4 rear cameras is a huge selling point, and this will certainly tempt a lot of buyers. But you should consider how much use you're going to get out of all of them before making a buying decision based on this factor alone. This refresh has been timed very well and keeps Realme close to the head of the pack. The Realme 5 Pro impresses us almost entirely across the board, especially considering its price. That's it for our review, but do stay tuned to Gadgets 360 for more videos and reviews like this. Thanks for watching.